6:30, so we will open up the December 21st, 2023 meeting of Sherburne County EDA. I'd be looking for a motion to approve today's minutes. With one amendment here, we're gonna move item 7 up to number 4, and Matt's running a little bit behind.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I'd also be looking for a motion to approve November 16th county EDA meeting minutes.
I'll move the minutes.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Jessica, we're gonna jump into, or Jessica and Dan, I guess, we're gonna jump then into number 7 and give Matt some time to get here, so we're gonna leave that up.
Okay. So just kind of trying to map out the next couple meetings, make sure that we're giving the due diligence to the housing summit and the information that came from that. So I kind of outlined the agenda for the next 3 months. So obviously we've got our agenda for today, so we'll just skip to January. January is the annual meeting. I thought it might be nice to do kind of a 2023 EDA recap, go through kind of our high levels, things that we've accomplished out of the strategic plan for 2023, and then have Minnesota Housing Partnership here to present on a local housing trust fund. I know that's something that the EDA is interested in giving more time to learn and see if that may be something for a recommendation to the county commission. So Minnesota Housing Partnership, they provide technical assistance in setting up housing trust funds for local government units. So that is, I think, going to be eye-opening. They know a lot more about that topic than I do. And then in February, we're planning on having Amanda Taylor come from Greater MSP to provide the feedback report from the land tour that we did on October 31st. And then we can have a conversation here at the table about what we learned from the Local Housing Trust Fund. And then that is the day that we're going to do the homegrown workshop with the University of Minnesota. So that would be after EDA from probably about 10 to 1 or 2. And I'm looking for a couple EDA members to attend that workshop for us. I think, Ken, you said you would. If there's another 1 or 2 that would like to attend from the EDA, please let me know. And then for March, we do have in our strategic plan to receive county updates from Health and Human Services and their work in housing, and then also Gina Anderson and the child care initiatives from Health and Human Services. And then we would invite zoning to do an update on zoning ordinance updates, permits, and projects in the townships. So thinking ahead, that's kind of what I was envisioning the first 3 months of 2024 to look like, and if either of you have feedback or things that you want to see on the agenda.
Some of the things that you've mentioned are really great things for us to delve into. Is there any concern on timeframes for making sure we are able to give each of those, because they're really large issues?
Right. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because something that we talked about, Dan and I had met with Ken, possibly extending the EDA meeting to 90 minutes instead of 60, just kind of get a feel from the group on what you think of that. But also to your point, Rayanne, if the conversation that we're having needs to be continued, I mean, definitely we'll keep it on the agenda for the next month and roll it over until we.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
What is everybody's thoughts on that, on more than 90 minutes?
Well, I think there's 2 ways we could do it. We could go to 90 minutes, or we could limit the topics on any given meeting so that we've got enough time within the hour. And frankly, I'm okay either way. But it depends on what we want to. I think we want to be respectful of everybody's time. But I'm okay either way. But
Would we be starting a little earlier at 8 o'clock instead? I think, personally, I think that would work better for me to go.
Me too.
We're gonna do a half hour earlier would be better.
I've got standing meetings in St. Paul at 10. So I'm already hauling.
As long as there's coffee out.
But I know some people come from farther away, so.
Well, it sounds like that's a plan. We have our organizational meeting the last Thursday in January. It's always the 4th because of our bylaws, and then we usually switch to the 3rd in January. So I'll put a proposed schedule into the packet so you can all review it beforehand of what next year would look like. Jared from Cargill has offered to give us a tour of his facility, and if you haven't been in there, it's pretty cool. Every room's a different temperature. It's kind of unique. So we'd probably have a special meeting for that, and whoever could come would be great, but we won't take up a normal agenda time with that. So I'll put that in the schedule too if you're okay
Yeah,
with that.
I think that'd be great.
One other thing I'd like to consider is, Jessica, have you thought about follow-up from the housing summit? I don't know what the right answer is on this, but we had a lot of come in to the housing summit. I'd like to make sure we've got some way to provide feedback so that those folks know that it wasn't just a one-time event, that it's a continuing project. And I don't know whether that is having a follow-up summit with those individuals sometime in the first half of next year, or inviting them back to, provide some additional feedback or give them an update, or whether it's an email update or something along those lines. I just think it's important that we provide those folks feedback so that they know their time wasn't wasted.
Yep. So a couple things on that. We did send out a post-summit summary. Did you guys get that? Anyone who attended? Okay. And that had just a high-level summary, but that's part of what we're doing, this month when I put those questions out and asked for feedback from the group. I didn't want the summary to be my interpretation. I wanted it to be a collective interpretation, and then put together a summary of that and get it out to the folks that were there, also cities and townships. But then also, I'm just gonna say this right now, and then we'll get to Matt. I see you, Heman, thank you. We're gonna be hosting 2 more workshops in the spring. And I met with Minnesota Housing yesterday, and we're gonna have one, it's gonna either be on March 6th or 13th, and this is gonna be an evening workshop, and it's for homeowners. And so Minnesota Housing is gonna come and discuss, hold on, I wrote everything down over here. They're gonna discuss, they're gonna have resources available, home buyer education, down payment assistance, mortgage, because they do lending, home improvement loans, and then we were gonna time that before their programming kicks off in the spring, some of their newer programs that they have in Minnesota Housing, and then to get that education out to our local home buyers on those new programs that are available. And I just kind of thought this morning, in order to fill that room, it might be a good idea to open that up and reach out to like my counterparts in Wright, Benton, and Stearns County and see if they want to extend that invitation to residents in their community, because we're talking Minnesota programs here. But that's one education that we're doing as follow-up. And then the second one is going to be directed towards builders and developers. And because there's several programs rolling out in that omnibus bill. The kind of caveat there is a lot of those programs haven't been written yet, and they're still hiring staff. So I learned that yesterday. And so the timing of that workshop depends on when they get their staff hired to administer those programs. And then we can have them come and do an education on what was in that omnibus bill for builders and developers. So those are 2 follow-up things that I have in the works. Yep.
Good. Anything else on the agenda? Everything look good there? All right. Then, yes, our esteemed guest has arrived, so.
Perfect, all right.
Matt?
The PowerPoint up here. Perfect, so this works here. Fantastic, good morning, everyone. Can't believe it's Christmas, 21st, it's 40 degrees outside, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. 50 degrees at Christmas Eve. Whoa. All right, so yeah, so I, little background here, I talked to Dan called me, I don't know, probably in the summertime, and we had talked about updating the housing study since 2020, because again, we did that housing study back through the pandemic, right, when the whole world was crazy. And so we said, okay, well, let's think about updating the study and providing a few different options. So I'm here today to talk about kind of the two approaches we could go down as far as updating that study and kind of the pros and cons of each and kind of pricing and timing and whatnot. So kind of go through that, and then we'll talk about some thoughts I have regarding housing production, especially, I've seen some of the notes that Jessica sent me from housing stuff, which is awesome. It's fantastic you did that. It's a great resource. I'm happy to see cities do that because most cities don't do that, or communities don't do that. So it's a great thing you guys did there. So I'll touch on some housing programs and stimulus things you can think about to help, bring new construction to the market. So, a little background, again, 2020, during the pandemic, so we completed that last study. And the last decade, we completed several other city-specific analysis, whether Elk River, Big Lake, St. Cloud. We're doing St. Cloud again right now. We just finished our neighbors, Benton County as well, just 6 months ago and whatnot, so that's just fresh data as well. The crazy thing is, we still do not have the 2020 census data out. Isn't that crazy? Here we are, almost 2024, it's still not out. High-level stuff is out. Just yesterday, the Census Bureau came out with the state of Minnesota numbers, and thankfully, we're growing again, barely, 0.04%. But since the pandemic, Minnesota's been going like this. So we're finally flatlining, so that's good to see. But most of that data still is not out. The final one is kind of touch on what's happening in the market right now. And good news came out last week when the Federal Reserve, kind of hinted that it's going to be rate cuts next year. So then the stock market went crazy, and people feel a lot more confident about the housing market now, going into 24 based on Jerome Powell's speech last week. So certainly a lot of hurdles ahead of us in 24 with interest rates, where they're at, and underwriting for new construction. All right, so to kind of break it down, it's probably tough to see. What I try to do is show the two options here, right? So on the left there was what we did, very similar in 2020. Standard, full deep dive comp housing plan. And on the right would be the more streamlined plan. So as you see, obviously a lot more deep dive on the left side. The biggest change really is going to be, let's say, for example, we call all apartments in town, or in the county, right? So in the comp housing plan, we're calling every property owner, getting their vacancy rates, rents, as your target tenant, et cetera. We're calling all the senior properties. We're talking to all the realtors, developer builders, et cetera. So that's really on the left side, right? And then the right side is just, okay, let's just project your demand out, give you some demand numbers, and run with it. And let's take out, all the phone calls that we're calling to every property owner in town. So that's kind of one of the big differences right there. As far as demographic trends, it'd be somewhat similar. Certainly more of a deep dive in the comp housing plan, but even the demand-only study, you still get all your updated demographics, employment numbers, where we're at in the marketplace. The biggest difference is, we would go out further. So in the full deep dive, we'll go out to 2035. We'll probably go to 2030 in the demand-only study. And again, more of a deep dive into the, on the right side there, the interviews, all the surveying, versus more high level on the demand-only side. And, the bottom there, more meetings, kickoff meetings. You know, I think you just mentioned that doing those, like focus groups, developers, investors, builders is a great thing to do. You know, that's something we could do as well. So a lot of times, you know, take Chisago County, for example. I'm in conversations with them right now again. I did their study in 2018 or updating it again now. They want me to do focus groups with developers and builders. So we're gonna do a lot of those throughout the county, get the you know, the key stakeholders in that room to get their feedback and try to stimulate the market and try to get their input on what we need to do to get new construction happening. So a lot more, you know, meetings in the full comp plan versus the demand only study. As far as budget, you know, it's about half if you go demand only, like about 20K versus about 38K. Plus travel, timing, we crank out the demand only in about 4 months versus about 6 months, probably 6-7 months in the full-blown comp housing plan. That just breaks it down to each section of the report, you know, how it would, what's included, what's not included, I won't go through all that. I'll just share this with everyone so you can have a copy electronically so you can go through it. Real quick comments about what's happened since the pandemic. So, you know, certainly what I'll call ex-urban areas, which I would put with Sherburne County in that, has seen a lot of growth outside the core metro area. We've certainly seen a lot of growth in, you know, Wright County, Chisago, over Wisconsin, Hudson, heck, even down to Owatonna, we got a ton of demand going on right now for housing. So certainly we've seen this movement. The number one driver is affordability. No question, it's affordability is driving mobility trends, and it's the ability to have cheaper housing costs. So at the end of the day, is what it is. Hence, we're seeing this continued mobility. Now, it has slowed down this past year than it was in 20 and 21 and early part of 22, but we're still going to see these trends. Because the reality is, most companies let people go hybrid work, and if they do come back in the office, it's a couple days a week of that. I mean, this other day, Target finally announced 1 week per quarter, you know, so that's not going to do much, right? So the reality is the hybrid work is here to stay, and that promotes opportunities to live anywhere, which is your, you know, selling point, right? So a lot of things have happened, but the biggest thing is affordability, more space, even in the multifamily side, for example. You know, prior to the pandemic, we were doing all these studio apartments, right? Everyone wanted a studio apartment for affordability, and let's just, you know, crank out studios, these small 500 square foot units. Today, nobody wants a studio unit. Everyone wants more space. So the new apartment communities that are going on today have bigger unit sizes, you know, 1-bedroom dens. People want that den. They want that workout room in their place. They want space for company. And the other big trend is rental apartments, townhome style, side by side, and detached single family. That is hot. So like St. Michael Albertville right now has got some detached single family rentals, and that's one of the hottest things being built today across the country because one, mortgage rates are so high, people want a detached structure, and a single family rental is a great middle ground for people who want detached housing but yet still want to rent. So there's a lot of opportunity in that sector for single family rentals. So a lot's happening, but the biggest challenge today we have, so there's the last bullet point, given today's rates, again, they're coming down. They've come down a lot in the past month, but housing costs are still at almost a 40-year high for affordability just because of rate hikes. And of course, rate hikes on top of the low supply and housing values that are holding, right? Because nothing on the market, there's just nothing for sale. Hence why the affordability is at a 40-year low, basically. And interesting enough, the new construction sector today, as we look at it, it's accounting for over 1/3 of all sales today. So because no one's putting their homes in the market, because let's face it, if you got a 3% mortgage rate, who wants to sell, or 4% rate, no one's selling, has builders now are picking up the slack, and new construction is accounting for 1/3 of all new sales today. Huge market share. Historically, that's a 12% number. So historically, 12% of all sales of new construction. Today, 33%. Because the only way you're getting housing today is going to new construction. Now, you're paying a premium for new construction, but a lot of the builders are offering the buy downs, right? So they're to buy down to the 5% range, some are even in the 4s. That's moving product today. Now, the challenging part is the national builders, Lennar, Pulte, D.R. Horton, or whatnot, if they can come in and offer you a buy down, but your local builders, your smaller people who are doing probably less than 50 homes a year, and they can't afford that, right? They can't afford to buy down that rate. That's a big hit. So you're seeing the national builders gain a ton of market share right now because the small guy just can't compete against the nationals on that buy down. So that's the interesting thing going on in the marketplace today. And national builders are coming in and buying up more land in a lot of ex-urban areas because they have the ability to do that and hold. So I think you'll see more nationals making their way into Sherburne here. So two things I want to touch on this slide and the next slide regarding what are we going to do to help increase supply. So this slide really is more geared toward multifamily housing, apartment stuff, construction. So given construction costs where we're at today, and given financing costs, here's what we're seeing. Most new projects today, the lenders are requiring a minimum of 40% equity to 50% equity from the builder developer to make a project finance, okay? Plus on today's rates means nothing's happening. So the short term right now, I think we're going to be down 80% over the next, in 2025 right now, because projects are being pulled because nobody is financing or make a deal pencil. So what is happening right now though is, number one, tax credit deals are still happening, and HUD financing is coming back. And the third thing is public-private partnerships, meaning public sector, private sector coming together to help make a project happen, okay? Whether that's a large company like Marvin Windows, for example, contributing to a housing trust fund, or Polaris, they're doing things. They're contributing money to help stimulate the market. At the same time, to make the deal happen, it takes many, many things to make a new project happen in today's world. TIF is probably number one. You got to offer TIF to make a lot of these projects work in the outstate markets. Tax abatement, other incentives to help alleviate the construction costs and those financing costs, because right now, nothing pencils. I mean, I'm working on a project, for example, in Edina. Main and Edina, crossing Southdale. You cannot get a better site than this, okay? We're talking like the Taj Mahal of properties. We cannot get a bank to finance this deal today, even though it's a premier piece of property. They won't touch it because the bank is just too scared to finance a new apartment today. That's like I said, made in Edina. So those are challenges we have today with financing some of these new construction apartments is the banks are lending, and you got to find other ways to help fill that gap, or things that just can be stalled out temporarily. So a lot of things happening, but typically it takes 3, 4, 5 different levers, right, to help make a project happen. Good example is I was down in Pella, Iowa last month. Pella Windows, you're probably familiar with that. But Pella, great city, Dutch community here in southern Iowa. check it out. I think it's the best Main Street in America as far as for a small town, under 10,000 people. Great, great city. Strict architectural guidelines, but Pella Windows just contributed $30 million to Housing Trust Fund to help stimulate the market there, in that market. So they went ahead, they bought a 200-acre piece of property, subdivided it all, put in infrastructure, and are subsidizing the lots to help get people built there. Then they also bought 2 properties next to it for a daycare, subsidized daycare. That's the next biggest challenge we have in America, right? Beyond housing is daycare. Then they bought in a brew pub. They wanted a brew pub. They got that. And they got Chick-fil-A. And they want Chick-fil-A. They courted them so much that they came to Pella, Iowa. But those are things that are happening right now with the private sector because they realize if we don't do something, how to retain and recruit to our company if we don't have housing stock for our workers. So we're starting to see a lot more creative, private-public partnerships today to help get projects built. The flip side of it is too, where are we at here? What can we do to help improve our existing stock? So last night I did a presentation in Hibbing, Minnesota. If anyone's been Hibbing, number one result that we got out of that job was existing housing stock, not the par, right? No one's maintaining their stock. Deferred maintenance everywhere. Just old product type. No one's improving their HVAC, window, roof, siding, whatever. So working with them on trying to do things like this help improve the existing stock, right? Let's offer low interest loans, for example, for someone to get new windows in their house or fix their siding, or let's offer rebates and energy efficiency or whatnot. So a lot of these can be done relatively very affordably. Like your summit you just had recently would fall in this category. Great thing, right? I always say, host a real estate summit, host a home improvements seminar in January when it's cold out. You can get ideas for home improvements, whatnot. So a lot of things that are out there that you can think about, to help improve your existing stock. It's just a sample, but I mean, there are relatively affordable things you can implement to help, bring up, so to speak, some deferred maintenance properties. So that's what I had. I want to keep it simple today. Just kind of, provide some context to that proposal and a few comments about, some of the stuff that Jessica sent me from your Housing Summit. So yeah, I just want to, open up Q&A and talk about any questions you have about our proposal, any questions you have about the housing market, or anything in between. So go ahead, Jessica.
I got a question.
Yep.
Do you know when the updated census data is projected to be out? Question 1. And question 2, would you even recommend that we do the housing study before that data is out? Or are we going to be looking at the same data?
Yeah, first question, no idea, right? No one knows when the Census Bureau is coming out with stuff. 2, it's not critical because we use other sources of data as well to fill in the gaps. I mean, gaps would be great to have, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of other sources we can get at to backfill and stuff. So it's not like it's gonna make or break it. So I don't think it's gonna, we've been doing, just doing the math the other day. We've completed 39 housing studies for cities and counties since 2020. None of them have had that 2020 census data. So I mean, it's not critical, it'd be nice to have, but I don't think it's gonna make or break, their analysis by any means. Yep, go ahead.
So I think for me, the most important difference between the updated study and the comprehensive study is the detailed actions and action plan setting. I think it would be helpful for me anyway to have a sample of what that would look like, to understand what level of detail those actions typically get into.
Yeah, I could send you an example of a demand-only study. You can see the difference, I mean, of what, you know. Clearly, it's a lot pared back. I mean, it's pared back quite substantially from what we would do in a comp housing plan.
Yeah, it's just and I'd also like to see on an example of the recommendations and actions plan from a similar comprehensive study. Yep.
I personally think that if we're gonna go down this road, I think I would want the deep dive, I would want those conversations with our stakeholders, because that's what we're trying to answer that question to. What do you need us to be looking at to make you want to invest in a project? And for that $20,000 difference, don't get me wrong, it's not chump change, but I think we want that big picture, that really deep dive answer, not just that
Right.
overview.
And I would say 90% of our clients go the deep dive route versus.
Because we heard loud and clear, just based on who all came to that housing summit. It's a huge issue. We are down to, I think, the demand for wanting to be here is so high, but the inventory is so low that, like you referred to, we're pushing our own housing prices up because we just don't have that supply. So what does go out there, people are willing to pay a premium for to get out of wherever they're coming from. So I wanna know what it is we can do to help someone come in and buy those, cause it isn't that we
So
don't.
that's the action steps that you're
Yeah,
looking for.
because it isn't that we don't have the available land, cause we do. It's just how do we get those two to.
Right, kind of together, yeah.
Any other specific questions for Matt? We can let him go and continue on the conversation.
I have one.
I have one quick one too, go ahead.
Are there comprehensive housing studies in which you've made recommendations based off the data that you've gathered on what types of tools or programs would be most effective to solve the problems that you identified?
Well, yeah, we do put together a list of programs and policies that you can implement, right? And in the last report too, if you look at the back of that report, in 2020, we had examples back to that, this way, I'm sorry. We put a bunch of these together in the last report that you could look at. We had a little summary of all the plans and policies. Now, we'll say, if you want good examples of cities that have done well, the reality is this. It's those cities that have an HRA EDA levy have a pool of money to pull in to afford this. So Bloomington, Minnesota, St. Louis Park, Golden Valley, those are probably, this toolkit, they have pretty much all of these, because they have an HRA levy that can fund this. They got a pool of money that keeps coming in that they can offer low interest loans or whatnot. So that's probably the cream of the crop. Now, other cities have them too, but they're minor, like Hutchinson, Minnesota. They have a housing trust fund. They do some nice things, but they have a very nominal levy coming in to help afford this. It really comes down to what's your pool pot of money that you're grabbing from, they can throw out the problem, right? So that's a big conversation to have, right? Big conversation.
Matt, my question is, at the summit, we heard a lot that each community has different fee structures and they can be pretty dramatic from one place to another.
Yep.
Is that some data you can provide, not just Sherburne County data, but from our neighboring counties to have some kind of comparison?
Fee structures are, great question, Dan. I mean, we could dive into that. I mean, that's a very valid point. I mean, yes, it makes a big difference city to city. I say it makes a bigger difference state to state. I mean, when we do work in like Stillwater, Minnesota versus Hudson, Wisconsin, it's night and day, right? You can build a house for $100,000 less in Hudson than you can in Minnesota. Yes, I think there will be some perception, I think, number one. Number two, you could be a couple $1,000 difference, but I don't think it's going to be, a major undertaking to build one city to the next. But I think, yes, no question, there is a perception of that.
We can just share with our cities.
Right.
And I don't wanna throw any cities under the bus, but here's what we're seeing for average fees, and they can take that data and do whatever
Yeah.
they want with it.
I mean, the cities that catch the most crap would be those ones that have like high park dedication fees and stuff like that. Let's pick a Woodbury, Minnesota, for example. I mean, Woodbury got caught and they got sued for, you know, inflating numbers and charging people additional fees on all the building permits because they were juicing all the park dedication fees and not putting it back in the pot where it needed to go. So builders don't want to go, you know, they don't want to go there. They're still building there, but it's driving up the overall cost of the house. So yeah, I think it's definitely an issue, and we can sort of look into that. I mean, it's a very valid point because I think the biggest is a perception that ABC community has high fees and is tougher to work with than ABC builder is gonna go to the next city over.
And I don't really want ABC cities listed, it's just more, here's some general parameters that we're seeing from a lot of the cities, so that if we gave that data to a city, they could say, hey, we're a little high on here, maybe we need to readjust, so.
I think we have to be very careful on that though, because each city, depending on, when you have like a city, Becker doesn't have a water treatment plant, Big Lake does. Becker doesn't have a $40 million expansion looking at them for their wastewater plant. Those are where those costs come into play. That's very hard for a city to be consistent with, but some of the fees you're referring to that are subjective can possibly be.
Yeah, but the homeowners don't care. What they care about is the fees. So I think it is valid to say that have a range. Like within Sherburne County, we see a range of the fees from here to here. Give that to the cities. They may or may not be able to do anything about it, but at least they have data that's actionable then. And the same thing.
They are aware of their ranges though.
What's that?
They are aware of their ranges. I mean, they look at each other. They do.
Well, I think it's validated to have.
I'm not saying it isn't.
And I also think that it doesn't hurt to have data from outside the county, sort of averages, and, you know, the same thing is, and not necessarily from, you know, we don't need it from someplace that's not really
Right.
we're not really competing with, but around us have some similar ranges. Once again, it just provides data that's actionable, and so I think that's.
So you can provide that data with either or plan or?
Yeah, well, that would be in the full blown, yeah. We would not be doing that level of detail in that demand only. But, you know, another example is, well, pick on Minnetonka. Minnetonka has some crazy fees. They have a strong tree ordinance as well. You gotta measure every tree at the circumference, and then if you don't have, you gotta pay, right? You gotta pay for trees to be moved or whatnot, so that's the one there. In Medina, Minnesota, for example, when you build a house, if you put $10,000 in escrow before your yard has been seeded. So they would not give you $10,000 back until you have a full yard growing, right? So $10,000 is a lot for a homeowner to throw into escrow for a year, not get your money back. But those, you know, you see all kinds of crazy things out there that cities do, and that people see that they're like, I'm not gonna put 10,000 in and have, you know, sit there.
So that would be part of the overall comp if we.
Yeah, that would be in the comp, not in the.
If I could just ask one quick question, because we're going into an area, it's public-private, you know, the private analysis where you're contacting all the builders, all that stuff, that's kind of typical. I think there's some desire to hear kind of on the public sector side, what's happening, whether it be regulations, because I know some of those solutions were regulatory modifications, and that's what the county's looking at. But there's also this kind of understanding, Sherburne County has all the cities in it, and a lot of our growth is gonna go to our cities, but we're seeing obstacles to city development, trying to go to the outskirts of our rural areas and underutilizing land. And there's this, where are the issues in Sherburne County, and understanding, you know, what are some of the factors in each city? You know, so you're giving examples of different things, but it's kind of that analysis of the, you know, policies that are out in the cities, where they're growing. So from a county's comprehensive housing study, I think there's a need to understand what's happening in each city too, on the public sector side.
Yeah.
I just wrapped up a comprehensive land use plan for the county
Okay.
for the zoning purposes.
Okay, sure.
And a lot of the growth was being, directly expected in our cities, but we manage the land outside of there and we have pretty loose development standards, so we're seeing underutilization of.
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper to develop out there and there's this, it's some questions that I'm looking to explore in the.
Yeah, I mean, very
sector
valid
side.
points. I mean, typically, in most communities we work in, it doesn't matter where to go. It's cheaper to develop in a township or area outside municipal boundaries. You go on depending on what your minimum lot size is, if it's a 3 acre minimum or 5 acre, whatever. A lot of times you put your septic well in and could be less than building in the city, right? So, a lot of cities we've worked with too have zoning overlay districts. So, say 2 miles within the municipal boundaries of the city, you can't develop certain property types within that district. The city still has jurisdiction over that development. So you don't go, well, it's the county line and build a new subdivision when you're 10 feet away from municipal services. So you do see some of those happening too, where the cities enforce a zoning overlay district between the city and township. But those are great valid points. I mean, we're really getting into more zoning land use questions then. This question is how much you want to dive into that issue. And if I go down that road, I do a lot of zoning work as well, but I'd probably bring in a third-party land use planner to review.
That's great, then it comes out of planning and zoning's budget. Way to go, Mark, appreciate you being here today, buddy.
Thanks for contributing.
In 2020 though, in 2020, we did have a third party review zoning codes and do infrastructure analysis in that last study as well. They did some add-ons for infrastructure, street, curb, gutter, what's serviced and whatnot. We did a high-level analysis back then.
Yeah, this is trying to.
We did a separate document for that. I think WSB helped us out on that one.
So I think our focus here is obviously data collection, and that's what we're relying Matt for, and so we'll have to decide as a board of what level we wanna go in that's going to be beneficial, where that value is. And so if you could provide the additional information that Andy had requested as to what the differences between the end results, actionable steps would be, that'd be helpful to make that decision. But
And the Initiative Foundation has said they'd give us about $10,000 to help with the study, so.
that'll help you out, Mark.
Yes.
But other than that, any other specific questions as far as the data provided for Matt? All right, well, sure appreciate you making the trip here today.
Oh, thank you for.
Sounds like you've been on the road a little bit, so.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas, and
You too.
I wish there's some white stuff out there, but not this year, huh? All right, thank you all. I'll put that together. You don't email.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, Jessica, were you done with number 7?
Yes.
All right, so on to number 5, housing next steps. Jessica did send out information on the housing summit. Asked for some feedback. I hear she got some really robust information back from us. So, Jessica, where do you want to take this?
Okay, so Chrissy, can you put that, the agenda back up there? So what I'm gonna do, can you go up to the December one? Okay, just so those 4 questions are in front of you. I'm just gonna ask the question. I did get some feedback from one of you, and I'm gonna say what that feedback was, and I just wanna hear a few of your thoughts, because I don't want this to just be my interpretation. Okay, so what are the recurring themes you are picking out from the information that I sent you with from the Housing Summit? Some feedback that I got was cost, streamlined process, affordable. What is affordable and how does one build affordable? build an affordable house with material and labor costs so high, infrastructure costs, and any options to reduce or share expenses. Anything else anybody wants to add to that? So that first question, what are the recurring themes you're picking up from the information from the Housing Summit?
Just low inventory and shortage.
And I would invite, I mean, anybody at this table, you guys too, if you have any feedback.
One thing I kept getting was lot size. There was a fair amount of discussion on lot sizes, and I think connecting that to affordability.
Yeah, I think pretty much any subcategory, everything we talk about is gonna go back to affordability. So if we're talking about low inventory, that drives affordability. If you go to lot sizes, that goes to affordability. I think anything else we go under that is just are just
Type of housing.
factors that figure into affordability, but it's affordability.
And you did put in, there's infrastructure, costs, and you also put in like potential fees that go along with it. And basically, what is it we can do to help stimulate the conversation to address all those issues, public-private partnership? That might go into the other number 3.
Yeah, the one, I think we talked about it last time, but it wasn't included in the summit itself, but it was a data point that I got from a study afterwards. And it was a comparison of income versus housing cost since 1980, I think it was. And so the gap had about doubled, right, between income and housing costs. But the other interesting data point was the square footage had also doubled. And so to me, there's a data point there, and I don't know how you necessarily address it, but it's, if the square footage had stayed the same, the relative ratio would have stayed the same. So I'm not quite sure how that gets addressed, but I think it's an important point that gets sometimes missed in the affordability cost.
Well, it's a very important point and a discussion I've had for years that doesn't get any traction because it doesn't play well out in the public. But the fact of the matter is what's considered a entry-level home today and what an entry-level home was in the 50s or 60s are completely different things.
Yep.
So the consumer doesn't get tagged with this, but the reality is that what their demands are for a suitable home is 10 times more. I mean, just drive through, you can even go to the outliners, go to the old part of Anoka, Coon Rapids, work your way back. You're at 900 square foot Ramblers with a single stall garage. That, America was just happy with that, right? Well, now your starter homes have 3-car garages, 1,200 square foot minimum sizes, and that's what's expected, and a lot of the amenities in there. So that's consumer driven.
Yep.
But that doesn't get any play. Okay.
Well, I don't know if that's changing though, because
It is changing.
Yeah.
But the market hasn't figured out how to adapt to that yet, because there again, municipalities, to Mark's point, have changed with it with larger lot sizes, things like that. Well, if you go down there, they're not large lot sizes. So everything's got, if you're gonna trend that way, you have to trend everything back that way to accommodate that.
Yep.
And to tell you the truth, by the time all that happens, the market's gonna correct itself and we won't have to worry about it. But we might be able to stay active here until that happens, and we'll feel good. All right, Jessica, sorry.
Okay. Question number 2, what are the topics you think the EDA needs to explore further? So we have local housing trust fund and how to fund it. Rayanne, you just mentioned something that you thought maybe should go down here.
Yeah, probably it was addressing the,
Infrastructure.
yes. And then also probably doing what level of study are we gonna do? a deep dive or just an overview?
Anybody else? What else do we need to explore further?
I think he threw out tech, just in what I heard just now, with how things are getting done, public-private partnerships. That's maybe through a housing trust or different things like that. It's tax increment financing. And then those are all kind of ways to solve potentially some of those solutions, but it means another.
I like the rehabilitation option that they mentioned. A lot of cities are doing that where they have $5,000 to $10,000 either forgivable loans or no interest loans to help.
Yeah, we've seen those programs roll through before. I think the last time was probably about 15 years ago when they put out a program for the cities like that to take out, blighted homes, things like that.
So that's increasing your tax base too when you're fixing things like that. The value of the home's gonna go up.
I know Big Lake took advantage of it, probably got rid of, I don't know, ran 6 or 7 homes and opened up lots. Where Big Lake made the mistake was they tried to ultra manage the sites after that as far as what could go on, and that kind of set the movement back a little bit, but at the end of the day, yeah, there's.
You still produced a product.
There's new product out
Yeah.
there.
That gave back way more than what was previously on. I think also possibly looking at, is there any way to, a lot of what he talked about was businesses that understood that they need to be a part of this to grow the workforce. And is there a way that some of our bigger businesses would, in our county, be willing to, how do we start that conversation with them? I think they're having it themselves, but how do we pull it together?
Okay.
And I'd like to understand too, would it be in the county's best interest to really put our HRA into, I think we have a meeting once a year just to say, to check the box of what we have to do, but we don't really actively, as far as I know.
Mobilize the HRA?
Yeah, is that something that would be, something that would help move the needle?
Are you suggesting a county initiated program where a private business, say Cargill, for example, was interested, but to get them interested, the county would participate dollar for dollar or percentage
I don't know
or
if I'm
something
saying
like that? Or
that
where
would
are you
be
going
on,
with
how do
this?
we explore what it is that would be, I'm not saying that that's what,
I don't think we know what we don't know.
right,
But I do think when we talk about like the HRA, is there a possibility of that also being, somehow set up so that private entities, could participate? Or is there another mechanism for that? I'd like to know what
right.
other communities are doing to pull in private sector funding as well.
And is there a way to attract outside, money? I don't know what kind of programs are available out there if you're actively doing an HRA, process. I don't know what's available for different grants either, so.
Do any of our cities have HRA besides St. Cloud?
We do.
Is it active more than once a year meeting?
It is, we meet 12 times a year.
It's levy funded.
Yeah, it's levy funded. We've got 460,000, I think was our levy for the upcoming year. How many loans did we do last year, Josh? 150,000 or so in loans, in a rehab type environment. I hesitate to say this, but, and I don't know how it affects counties at the city level, the way I understand the statute, an HRA can assume the same powers that are granted statutorily to an HRA. That's something that I've looked at, with our EDA as we cross into some of those like workforce type housing issues where it's housing, but it's really an economic development issue. Is that, where do you have those land?
That's what I mean by exploring it.
And we had mentioned a CDA too, where you actually go to the legislature and ask for what authority do we have? Here's what we suggest. Can we do it? And we'd have to lobby for that, but it's definitely an option. A lot of our size counties have done that.
Okay. Got enough to work on under question 2 there?
Okay, so the next question is,
And Jessica, I do have to get the abatement conversation in, so.
Just
I anticipated this so like our County Connect meeting isn't starting till 11.
Can everybody stay an extra 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Technically, I have a meeting at 9:30, but I can be late for the other one.
Yeah, well,
I was gonna add too, that, what he said about Pella Windows, like, blew my mind. So I'm thinking I'm gonna call Marvin Windows and see if they're interested in, I'm being funny right now, but seriously,
Crystal cabinets, my
$30 million?
But they're,
Yeah.
they need workforce. And
No
they're,
kidding.
they're like up north where they
Yeah.
need to really be a part of that conversation.
We need to make friends with the window company. Okay. What ideas do you think of that could be part of a solution? Okay, well, this is just kind of the question before, but we have options for short-term tax abatement on residential property, new development rehabilitation projects, help first-time home buyers or even owner-occupied duplex properties, development of land, reduce the holding cost risk if the parcels do not move immediately. So that was some of the feedback that we got. Is there anything else to add to that, or is that kind of meshing with the question previously?
Yeah, I think it does kind of mesh.
Okay. Who else could we bring into the conversation to add expertise? We've got Minnesota housing programs available for multifamily and senior housing, consumer down payment and closing cost loans, fix-up home improvement loans. So we've got kind of that education piece that's going on for home buyers and builders and developers so that they know what's available to them. But who else? We talked about maybe doing something to engage our larger employers.
Our manufacturing partners for sure.
I think too, when you talk about the developers, I think we still really have to have that real deep dive conversation with them. If you see this parcel of property that's for sale and available to develop, what is stopping you from doing it, from picking that piece up? What are the barriers and how can we work together to possibly eliminate some of those?
Maybe we can get some to come to EDA.
Well, and I look at it as, when you look at these big parcels that are sitting empty, had a few buyers here and there, deals fall through. Why? Because if we are part of helping to move that and get them to build, and if they can build 400 houses, I'm just gonna use that as an example. And that piece of property right now is sitting paying ag tax. What we might contribute or invest in is gonna pay us back within possibly, I don't know what the numbers would be. Even if it's 5 years. If we're gonna sit around and wait possibly 10 years for something to move. And in the meantime, not be able to attract business growth because we have no workforce to go with. To me, those are investments that would make sense once we understand.
If I could just jump to the last question, who and what are we missing? There's a certain coordination effort. You know, you have planning and zoning sitting over here, you have economic development over there. We have HHS that has a part of this, we have cities that have a part of it. There's maybe not, the correct coordination. We're getting past the barriers that used to exist in our departments and even across our communities, but there's a coordination effort, and I wanted to throw this out there because when I went and spoke down at AMC at the Economic Forum, we were complimented on the efforts that we were taking through our comprehensive land use plan, housing study, the housing summit. They were very positive feedback from the different commissioners that were at that thing, that we're doing the right steps. But they had people from a housing trust fund, they had an HRA person, who are actually getting these things to the ground. And I just wanted to say there maybe is a coordination effort because we have a lot of people working on this. We all have different pieces. And Dakota County has a really unique example. So if you at your time, I can maybe send it to Jessica and send it out to the group. But they have Dakota County Communities for Life. And they have a person that's in the HHS department that coordinates a lot of efforts, ties zoning together, ties economic development together, ties health and human services together, and they coordinate and push out information. It's kind of a unique role in the county. It's one of the few people I see that do that type of work, but as far as like who's ahead of the curve, behind the curve, it felt like they had a good jump on things because they had this person in this place who was connecting all these groups. So that coordination of the efforts. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there, and I'll pass it along to Jessica, and maybe just the link to that work that they're doing is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I know at one time when we did hire a housing person that does work out of HHS, I guess my thought when we did that was a little bit different than what ended up happening, because they are very, very busy and their time is spent where the greatest need is, and it's up in our part of St. Cloud in Sherburne County. So I guess when I was thinking, I was kind of thinking not on the same page, but I would like to see someone like what you're talking about that would be more involved in.
I think at the end of the day, the point is absolutely correct, and maybe that, position. But the point is that we can do all the studies, we can have all the information, but if we can't figure out how to operationalize it,
Yes.
then it doesn't do any good.
It's just
And
paper.
that,
Functional boundaries
yeah,
across.
and
yeah.
working,
Just
working
words on
across
paper.
silos and all that stuff. So I think that's I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, Dakota County did a nice job with it, so it was one of those ones that kind of blew me away.
That's it.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the housing? All right. On the tax abatement, updated policy then.
At the last meeting, we formed a committee to look at our policy for tax abatements. It's in our strategic plan that every couple of years we review our policies. And we had a committee meeting. We did come up with several changes. I'm just gonna highlight a couple of the big ones. I did put a summary in your packet, but the first couple are the big ones. Going forward, instead of abating 100% of the property taxes, at least they'd have to pay 10% of their taxes. Any new tax base created, they'd have to pay at least 10% of the taxes on that. It would limit tax abatements to 10-year and $500,000. That's a pretty big change, because right now it's 15 years and kind of an unlimited amount based on the value of the property. So that is the most significant change. And then we did have some minor changes, but we scored it a little different where it'll help local businesses that are smaller trying to expand as opposed to a big company coming in new and already has a lot of funding. So this was really intended to look at existing growth of our smaller businesses and score them a little higher than the large companies. So those were the three major changes. We tweaked some of the scoring, but as we move forward, those are the three I really wanted to highlight for the group, for the whole group. So I would like a motion on recommending this to the county board, and then it would go to the board on January 2nd for final approval. I think we do have some abatements coming. That's why I'm kind of trying to move this forward as quickly as possible.
So moved.
What's that?
Motion made by Andy,
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next meeting is January 25th. That's our annual meeting, as previously talked about.
Is that at a different time or is it the same time?
Same time.
Just the
but
fourth
it's on
Thursday.
And then going forward from then, we'll probably start at the 8 a.m.
Okay.
on the third Thursday of the month, if that's, we approve our schedule, but that's what'll happen as a draft.
Can I beg a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you. Jessica and I had the opportunity to attend a BNI meeting in Elk River. Really fun group of people. Jess did a great presentation to them. And I just wanted to share some feedback, like when we're talking about what we just did and wanting to help grow our smaller businesses through abatements and different things. And Jess gave them great information. I had some contact afterwards. After we left, they did a lot of talking. They were blown away. They had no idea that these things were available to them. And it was great to see their enthusiasm and stuff. And Jess puts a really good line out there. She says, I know that when you hear I'm from the government and I'm here to help, you usually want to run the other way. But seriously, we're here to help. And then she goes into her presentation. So it really, really hit a lot of people. So thank you for taking those time to visit those BNI groups, because they just are unaware.
Yeah, they're by far probably, there's BNI and Biz to Biz. Yeah, they're probably my favorite groups of people
And there are small
to
backbone.
visit with, one of them, but yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to say
just a group of small business owners that are really, really actively trying to grow their businesses, and boy, did they appreciate hearing from the
Hearing
county.
that, yeah.
Yep.
Because there was one lady who started her business at home. She's outgrowing that space, and she's looking to lease in one of the strip malls here in Elk River. And she was gonna work with the SB Small Business Law, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, don't go there. That'll eat you up. And so I think she really, really connected with what we might have to offer her for her growth.
Fantastic, good work, Jessica. On that note, I'd look for a motion, well, we don't, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
All right, thanks, everybody. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work this year.
Yeah, SBA is great once you have a successful